99X, the Morning X. It's Barnes, it's Leslie, now with our new 7 to 10 news shows. No more best of in the 9 o'clock hour. And Leslie, can you believe it? Fewer commercial breaks now in every hour.
It's fine by me. I don't know how that happened.
You're welcome. Well, we went in and just roughed up some people. Said, listen, that's enough. Enough with the commercials. Okay, when we did our streaming picks, we were talking about Loki, and we both talked about how I just don't get it. And I mean, it is what it is.
I like Tom Hiddleston, but I don't get Loki. And
it's MCU, the Marvel Universe, is a very big thing. So I thought it would be great to have on someone on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, Joanna Robinson, who is a podcaster and a cultural critic for The Ringer. And she's on several shows, The House of R, The Ringerverse. She's a former Vanity Fair writer, comes with complete cred, and has a new book called MCU, The Reign of Marvel. Good morning, Joanna.
Good morning.
Help us get there.
Well, what do you want to get? What's your question about Loki?
I mean, it's not just Loki, but I feel like we're missing out maybe because we're so like, I mean, Marvel, which generates so much money for this economy right here in Atlanta, down at Trilith at those studios, but I don't get it.
You're just not a fan. I mean, the one thing I did like, I think this is in the Marvel universe, Joanna, Hawkeye with Jeremy Renner.
Yeah, absolutely.
I loved Hawkeye. Did like that.
Yeah, it's interesting for Marvel right now. I was going to ask you the reason you don't like or don't get it. Is it because when they shoot downtown they mess up traffic and you're like, what is this Ant-Man business going on downtown? I was in Atlanta when they were filming Avengers Endgame at Trilith Studios, but they were also shooting Ant-Man and the Wasp downtown, and it was just blocks were blocked off. So, if I lived downtown Atlanta, I might not be thrilled. But I think what's interesting about Marvel, what made Marvel explode in the first place, is the innovative approach they took to franchise filmmaking, where all of their movies interconnect. And so I can understand where if you're sitting there saying, well, I don't watch every single Marvel movie, so I feel a little lost, a little behind when I get to Loki. I feel a little out of place. Whereas something like Hawkeye, I think that story, they did a good job of sort of scooching it out of the main story. So you could just watch it if you hadn't watched anything before and enjoy it and understand it and feel like you're on the same page with everyone. And I think that's a real challenge for Marvel right now, over 10 years into their supremacy in Hollywood, is the very thing that made them different to begin with. That interconnected sticky web of a universe now starts to feel like homework for people.
Exactly.
But Leslie, when you hear Marvel, Leslie, what is the first word that comes to your mind as brand recognition?
Yeah, fantasy, which, I'm not a big fantasy person, but I believe Joanna just hit the nail right there by saying you feel like you have to, all these stories are interconnected, and if you're not caught up from the beginning, you're lost.
But I'm coming at it from a brand POV, and I asked you that question on purpose because for me, it's comics. So when I look at Marvel, I think my brain has a hard time saying, well, what are you, Marvel? Because are you comics? Are you superheroes? Are you dramas? And that for me maybe is what makes me go, I don't get, when I say get, I don't get what you're going for. Because didn't they start out like as an indie play?
The studio itself or the comics? Yeah. The comic, it's so interesting. Honestly, it's really interesting how they went from a comics brand to you, it means comics. I think to most people who are much younger than we are, it means the movies and now the TV shows on Disney Plus. And the way that they transformed themselves from a bankrupt comic book company in the 90s into this Hollywood power player, that's a lot of what we cover in the book, but it's such an interesting story. It's a huge gamble that they took to decide not only are we going to make movies, but we're going to stop farming our characters out to studios who we're not really sure they know what they're doing. We saw the Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck, or there was the Elektra spinoff. There was just like a bunch of movies in a row where they're like, do these other studios know what they're doing with our precious Marvel characters? And they decided maybe we could make those movies ourselves. And, by the way, also keep all the money on the other side of it. So, yeah, it was a big risk they took. But that's that's been the key to their success. Absolutely.
We're talking to Joanna Robinson, one of the authors of MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios. I didn't realize, because I was looking through your book, I didn't realize that the hiring of Robert Downey Jr. was so contentious. What was that about?
Well, you remember, you're closer to my age. Like, you remember what was going on with Robert Downey Jr. in the early aughts, late 90s. There were a lot of, he was having a lot of trouble with drugs, with certain behavior.
That's right.
This is something that he's talked about a lot as well, so we're not telling any secrets here. And so when it came down to casting him, which was such a big, important move for Marvel, that first Iron Man movie had to be a hit, or else the whole experiment was going to fall apart. When it came down to casting him, certain people in the studio wanted him. He came in, he did the screen test. They were like, that's it. That's Tony Stark. Couldn't possibly be anyone else. And some people who have control of the money were a little more nervous because they were like, is this too much of a risk? Is this guy stable enough to do this? And then lo and behold, he becomes the anchor of a massive franchise for years and years and years to come.
By the way, Joanna, you mentioned you're the same age as Leslie, so you're 40 also?
I'm 40.
Got it.
Thank you.
Cool Robert Downey side story that some people may not know. When he started, like when the whole thing started with him with all the Marvel stuff, I guess with the era you're talking about, he was staying in a house over here in Buckhead right off of West Paces Ferry, and part of his agreement was that they would helicopter him to Trilith, to whichever studio he was filming in, every day. And to do that, the helicopter, couldn't land in the driveway. So they went to Pace Academy, a high school, a private school, made a deal so he could land in the back parking lot. And in exchange for that, he spoke at their graduation.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that cool? And it was not advertised. It wasn't put out at all. But here's my Marvel question.
Yeah.
They're kind of at a crossroads right now, is what I believe.
Absolutely.
I mean, some of their projects like Thor, Love and Thunder, Secret Invasion have completely disappointed. And they've got to make a decision. And in your eyes, being an expert at Marvel, where do they go to make it now a thing? Again, like big.
I mean, to be clear, it's still very,
it is
they still earn so much money. It's still very big, but I cannot disagree with you that fans have been disappointed with some of the recent offerings. And I think, to go back to Leslie's point earlier, removing that feeling that you have to do homework. So try to make some of these things feel more contained and standalone. So if someone is interested in it, they can just go see it. I really relate to this. My sister, who is a huge Spider-Man fan, was resentful that when she went to go see the first Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, she felt like she was already behind because he had already appeared in an Avengers movie. Yep. And so she's like, what? I have to catch up for the very first Tom Holland Spider-Man movie? So I think trying to separate back out again.
What has been the most successful of all the Marvel franchises? Is it Spider-Man or?
Spider-Man is currently, and that's a tricky one because they do it in conjunction with Sony, because years ago they sold Spider-Man to Sony, so that's a really complicated one for them. But the overall Avengers Endgame is one of the biggest movies of all time. So of all the Avengers movies, if you put Avengers : in front of a title, that is the one that people really want to line up around the block for.
Well, that's great info. Keep them coming, though, Marvel, because you're stimulating the hell out of this economy. So we do love that. Joanna, where can we find you? Where's the best spot to find Joanna Robinson, the queen of Marvel?
On Twitter at Jo Wrote This, on The Ringer, on House of R, and The Ringerverse.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. It was great to meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
The Morning X with Barnes and Leslie. 99X.